Hello, this is Chef Debra of the Blind Kitchen, where everyone has a seat at the table. You're listening to White Canes Connect.
Hey there, PA Federationists. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I am the treasurer of the Keystone Chapter. Joining me today is Keystone Chapter Second Vice President, Lisa Bryant. Lisa, how are you today?
I am doing well today, David, and what a wonderful conversation with Chef Debra Erickson of the Blind Kitchen. You were the one that brought her to our attention.
Yes, we connected over on Instagram a while ago, and I thought, what a great idea that we should have someone like her on. So many blind folks, whether they're newly blind and they can't figure out how to get back into the kitchen, or folks who have been blind their whole life that basically are making meals from a freezer to a microwave, and that's how they eat. And I just thought it's very important. I know there's a lot of things that she sells that I'd like to use when I make stuff in my kitchen. And I think it was a great interview, and she has a lot of interesting items that could be very helpful for folks.
Yes, and what you will also hear is her genuine passion for helping people. So take a listen.
Chef Debra, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, Chef Debra. Welcome to White Canes Connect. And we actually need to thank you, David. You were the one that found Chef Debra. How did that happen?
I'm not sure if I followed her on Instagram or she popped up in my feed or if she followed me, whatever it was. We connected on Instagram and I thought, what a great idea. I know so many blind folks that either don't know how or are afraid to cook or even go into the kitchen to make even the simplest things, that I thought, boy, this would be something good to have to give people more confidence and show everyone what kind of tools are out there. And I know Chef Debra is going to give us a lot of information on the tools that are available to blind folks.
Yeah, and I think it was a good idea. But before we get into the nitty gritty, Debra, please tell us about you. What were you doing before the Blind Kitchen? How did you come up with the idea of the Blind Kitchen?
Well, I have not always been blind. I am now. I have retinitis pigmentosa. And once I did experience vision loss so far that I needed to go to the Oregon Commission for the Blind to get my blind skills. And I learned my orientation and mobility, how to use a white cane. I learned Braille, and I was in a cooking class with my teacher, who's now my colleague and a dear friend. And the light bulb, I knew I wanted to teach adults, but I didn't know what I wanted to teach them. And I was cooking with Shar, and the light bulb went on. I could teach cooking, but then I realized I had one problem: is I didn't know how to teach cooking. I hadn't never barely been formally taught, and I'm very skills based. So I went to culinary school as part of my vocational rehabilitation. And when I got out of culinary school, I went to my graduation, and my cooking instructor from the commission attended too. And 3 days later, she was not going to be able to teach the following term. And so the Oregon Commission for the Blind hired me to teach meal prep. And so that went along just fine. That was in June of 2019. And then in March of 2020, 6 months later, COVID hit. Yep, COVID hit. And yeah, it's hard to teach cooking remotely. I'm not saying it's impossible, but especially if I can't see. So I was, quote unquote, paused for an unbelievable year and a half. And so the idea of this came into my mind. I actually was working with another woman on it who had normal vision. And we started together, and she was very, added a lot to it, but she wasn't able to go on for her own personal reasons. So then it was in my lap. And so I took a class at the Small Business Administration, and I had to do everything myself, but they helped me break it down into manageable pieces. And so for that, the rest of that year, all I did was revise, and they hooked me up with a videographer and stuff like that. And so now I still do teach at the Oregon Commission for the Blind part-time, just 2 days a week. And the Blind Kitchen is my other event. So it came from COVID. So there were good and bad things that came from COVID. And this was my having that much time on my hands and desperate to teach people.
So when you said you revised, are you talking about a business plan, or did you actually build the website yourself? How did that all work out?
Yeah, good question. So no, I did not build it myself. I'm a teacher and I'm a cook. And I hired other people to do my website. And my website designer is fabulous because she designed it in such a way that I can even operate the business from the back end of it without any assistant. And she took a class at the Small Business Administration at a separate time, as did my videographer at a different time. And we all ended up together. And so it's just been so, but to your question, the revisions were to the business plan. So when that woman and I were doing it, we wanted to do cooking lessons. And we actually got together in Arizona, and I'm in Portland, Oregon, and we got together and tried to film it. And I was getting bored. I was just doing too much talking. We didn't really know how to do it. So when I went out on my own, I had to hire my own videographer. He's the one that helped me to now, not lessons. Let's do tools and people that already know how to cook. So lessons is on the radar, but it's much more difficult. And I'm just trying to get this firmly, running. We only opened in October of 2022, so we're relatively new.
So speaking of tools, I'd like to give like a sample or example of what kind of tools are available. But what I was reading, you wondered when your vision became too challenging, the things that you were accustomed to doing without thinking, having your kitchen organized, how you would use a knife, how you would go grocery shopping, very simple, basic things. Give an example of how you that's such an overused word as pivot, but what was it?
Oh, yeah.
What was your redo of some of those simple things like that?
I have hundreds of those, but you are absolutely correct. When you have vision loss, or if you're blind, people that can see can just glance and do it. They can just look over. Oh, it's right over here. We have to be much more mindful. Where am I going to set this right now? How am I going to label this? And not everyone reads Braille, but there are probably 8 other ways. Some are high tech, some are no tech, to be able to know, like your spice jars, 4 or 5 of them feel exactly alike. How are you going to know which one is which? And there are different tools out there using your smartphone. There's something out there called a pen friend that actually you can record onto stickers and labels. There's just a lot of different ways to do it. And it can be as simple as, if I have a can of cream and mushroom soup and a can of cream of chicken soup, and how am I going to tell them apart? They feel exactly alike, they sound alike, they're heavy. I can just put a rubber band around the cream of mushroom, and because chicken doesn't have an R in it, but a rubber band does, and mushroom does. And so then when I go to my cabinet, so it's there's a lot of low cost, low tech ways to do it. And there are some really good high cost, high tech ways to do things too.
It's funny that you mentioned that with spices, because that's one of my challenges. And the easiest way I've found, because some of the spice jars are, they're so small that any of the apps like Seeing AI or Envision can't read them. The workaround that I've found is using the barcode. And in Seeing AI, they have a product scanner. So you just have to find the barcode, and then it tells you. You're not trying to kind of roll the jar as it's trying to read it, so you can get enough information out of it. And, that's what I found to work. And that's interesting with the rubber bands, because I've seen that done before with sodas and things like that at somebody's house that I was at. So that is also a very good tip.
Oh, thank you.
So to get to this collection you have of all of these workarounds, that's the word I was struggling to remember earlier. Did you get, was some of that training did you get some of that training from when you went for your, mobility training and all of the other training you got at the center, or did you learn some things along the way? Could people contribute idea? How did you come up with all of the workarounds?
All of the above. So it started at the Oregon Commission for the Blind with the work trays and talking thermometers. I didn't have a clue how all that stuff worked. And I had more vision when I started there than when I ended there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was absolutely the first place. And then when I went to culinary school, there were things I had to do, but I was held to the exact same standards that the other students were. And the thing I never got right in culinary school was I could never finish on time. You were given, just like the cooking shows, you have an hour and a half to do all these tasks and clean up and put it, and I never finished on time, but the chefs were wonderful. They'd say, if you can't finish on time, finish strong. And that was what I focused on. I just, if I start going fast, things spill, things get messy, people get hurt. I'm just not going to do it. And I don't enjoy cooking under that kind of pressure. That's not something I enjoy. So I just do it that way. But I had to figure things out. And I'll give you an example. So when you go to a hot dog stand, they have those squeeze bottles of ketchup and mustard. So they had a canola olive oil mixture, and it was at every single workstation. And I knew where to find it. But they would cut the tops open, and people would just squeeze a tablespoon into it, or 2 tablespoons, whatever they needed, into there. And I didn't want to have to take a tablespoon out every time and pour it in and check it and pour it in. So I actually discovered, I was a bartender in college, and the liquor bottles had automatic dispensers. So people can't give their friends a heavy pour and the bar loses money. I found one that measures out exactly a tablespoon. I call it the auto measure spout. You put it on top of it has to fit nicely on an olive oil bottle or a canola oil bottle or whatever. And you tip it upside down. You can use one hand to see for you. Where's that pan I want to pour it in, or where's that bowl? You tip it upside down. It just takes about a second, and it's like it's thinking, but it's not. It works with ball bearings or something. And it dispenses 1 tablespoon of liquid, and it stops, even if you're still holding it upside down. So then if you want a second tablespoon, you just turn the bottle upright again. It redoes whatever it does. And then you tip it upside down again, and you're going to get your second one. So those are the kind of tools that I would say 90% of the tools in the blind kitchen were not intended for blind people, but they really help us.
That's one thing David has been chomping at the bit to hear about measuring. How do you get exact measurements, especially when it comes to liquids?
Oh, you nailed it. Liquids are the trickiest part. So I love this item in the blind kitchen. We didn't invent it, but I think we perfected it. So let's say you need a teaspoon of vanilla for your recipe. And vanilla is very expensive right now. You don't want to spill it.
You don't want to waste
it.
Right.
And if it says add 1 teaspoon of vanilla, I generally add 2, just saying.
Okay.
It's so good. But what the blind kitchen has done is, whether you're using measuring cups or measuring spoons, this is what the dry and wet measures have in common. And then I'll tell you, the wet did require an adaptation. So they're made out of stainless steel, so they'll never rust or stain. But embedded into the handle, these are not bump dots. These are not tactile paint. These are part of the stainless steel handle themselves. There are bumps in there that are very easy to feel. It's not braille. So if you are running your fingers up the handle on any of the cups or spoons, and there's 4 dots that you can count, that's a 1/4 cup or a 1/4 teaspoon. No vision required. They just come right up. But the difference between the wet measure cups and the wet measure and the dry measure cups and spoons are, going back to the vanilla. If you are holding the 1 teaspoon measuring spoon, and there'll be 1 dot on that, so you'll know just by feeling it. When the way they're made is the handles don't go out like a pan, like it's horizontal to your counter. They're going to stick up towards the ceiling. So it resembles a ladle. So how do we efficiently transfer liquids with soup? You do it with a ladle.
Right.
Yeah.
So the beauty of this, so if you order the wet measure spoons, we also send you a small pitcher. It's probably about 1.5 inches around, about 2 inches tall. So when I take that, I'm going to call it a teaspoon ladle, but that 1 teaspoon, and I set it inside that little plastic spouted pitcher. Now my hands are free again. It can stand up by itself. If I could do anything to give people, I'd give them a third hand, blind people, because that really comes in handy. But so this way, it's kind of giving me a third hand. Even though the spoon has a rounded bottom, the diameter of that cup is small enough that it's going to hold it upright. So then I take the vanilla and I'm pouring it in. Instead of pouring and checking with my other finger, pouring and checking, which takes forever, and it almost always results in spills. I pour the vanilla, and I have my index finger on the top of the steel part of the measure spoon, and I submerge it. I completely wait till it's submerged, because that way I know when I go to transfer that to my target bowl, if I don't hear anything drop out, it is going to be completely level because it was just completely under liquid. So if I don't hear anything drop out, I know I have an exact level teaspoon. I transfer it to the dish, pour it out. But now I've got overflow in that little plastic pitcher.
Thank you. I was going to ask about that. Thank you.
So we also send a special size funnel. It took us a long time to find it, but it's about 5 inches tall, and they fit even in the smallest of vanilla bottles. So now, instead of trying to pour that vanilla into the little tiny hole in the top of the bottle, now you have about a 3-inch target. It goes really quickly. You're funneling it right back into it. And you haven't wasted any. You know you have an accurate measurement, and it's so quick and easy. That's absolutely one of our biggest sellers, because you'll never buy another measuring cup or spoons again. They'll last forever.
It just sounds like you're now so able to just effortlessly move around your kitchen.
Well, you make it sound like with all of us. Sometimes I'm not as careful as I should be or whatever. And sometimes I do move too quickly and I might spill something. But I'll tell you about another thing in terms of spills. So let's say I'm pouring that vanilla and I accidentally knock the bottle over and I don't have the lid on it. Okay. I work 100% over work trays. And these are just your standard cafeteria trays that you'd find in a hospital, a school, a prison, a hospital, whatever. They're virtually indestructible. And that way, if I do accidentally spill something, it's not gonna come across my counter, down in front of my drawers and onto the floor where I've got a mess. It's gonna be contained in that tray. And so I also use those work trays. We send out a dark colored one and a light colored one, so that people that have residual vision, if they're cutting a white onion, use the dark tray. And that way you can, use the contrast if you can. If you're cutting a red onion, use the white tray. It's going to give you, I use what vision I have. It's not very much, but I use it. And I encourage other people to as well. But I use it for a cutting board. And so that way I used to use wooden cutting boards that were, like maybe a 1/2 inch tall or whatever, and stuff would always be scattered around it when I got done, but not with the work trays, because they have the raised size. They're going to contain it necessarily.
Are those trays dishwasher safe?
They are dishwasher safe. The only problem is they're usually too big for the dishwasher.
Right. Okay.
They're usually too big. So at work, we have them at the Oregon Commission for the Blind. Our maintenance person took out the top shelf of one. We have 4 teaching kitchens. He took off the top shelf of one of them. So we do have, we use trays all the time, and probably, like 20 a day. So it's nice to have that. And luckily we have 3 spare dishwashers. Thank you.
So when you were talking about cutting boards, I was thinking, all right, so how do we navigate around using knives?
Excellent question. So there's a couple things I want to mention here. One is the sharps baskets. And what we do is that if I'm at my work area, I've got my work tray that I'm working on. I put a garbage bowl to the top left of my work tray, so I don't have to run back and forth to the garbage with eggshells or anything like that. Any of my packaging just goes into the garbage bowl. Then in front of me, there is a sharps basket. And it's basically kind of like a drawer organizer. I think it's about 14 inches long, about 2 inches wide, 2 inches deep, where you can put pencils in it or whatever, but it's bigger than that. And it has rubber feet on the bottom, so it's non-skid. So when I'm at my work area, if my knife is not in my hand and it's not, and I'm not using it, it's going to be in that sharps basket, what we call it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an identical sharps basket at the sink. So that, let's say I'm cutting a raw protein like chicken or something, and I don't want to put it back in the one that I'm going to use for produce later, in that I don't want to get the one at my work area dirty. I just have to carry it over to the sink. I don't have to clean it right away. Now it's in the sink, and it's not, my hands aren't going to accidentally touch it in the bottom of soapy water or anything like that. And this is especially important if you live with people that have vision. So my husband can see, and we have this agreement. And the thing is if it is not, I'll never find a knife in the bottom of the sink. He is very careful to put it in there. And so we use this in teaching too. So when I reach forward, if my hands touch, I know what that looks like, or feels like, I guess I should say. I know that sharps basket. It's pretty distinct. It's not like a cup or a plate. Then I'm going to be real careful at that point, because I know there's potentially going to be sharps in it. And that can include kitchen shears. It can include peelers. It can include mini box graters. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about. But this is probably the most important tool we have in the blind kitchen, and it's called the cut glove. I heard David refer to it a little bit earlier. And what it is, it's a very flexible glove that you put on your hand. It's made of threads. It's a weave that cannot be cut through. I mean, I suppose if you took an axe and chopped through it, you could do it, but don't wear a cut glove if you want to chop your hand in half. I mean, what's the point? Yeah. But you literally, I demonstrate, I hold it with I put it on my left hand. I put my palm up. It's got 4 fingers and thumb, and I can very easily, it's not bulky at all. It's on the thin side and stretchy. And I can take a sharp chef's knife and run it back and forth across my palm. I'm not pressing really hard, but it doesn't cut the threads at all. Nope. And so the thing is, the other place that's really good for is for grating, because I don't know of any cook that has not left their DNA. Those, even if they can see, those blades are really hard to judge, and it's angled, and it's really tough. So if you wear those, what's going to happen is you're going to be grating, and then all of a sudden you'll feel the thread snag. And you know what you do? You stop. You stop in your skin. And it's the same thing if I'm slicing carrots, and all of a sudden I feel pressure on the hand holding the food that I don't expect, I'm going to stop. But if I hadn't been wearing that glove, that would be my skin. By the time my brain registered that's unnatural pressure, it would have cut it. So those cut gloves are wonderful. And again, not made for blind people. I did a work experience as a cook in a deli store combination, and all of the cooks were required to wear them by the insurance company. That's how I learned about them. And it wasn't because I was blind. Yeah, they were wearing them long before I got there.
You know what it sounds like when you're using something like a mandolin or food chopper? It comes with that, I think it's called a food guard or something.
And I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's always this, this note like, do not use this device without that food guard. That's what that cut glove sort of reminds me of. And again, not necessarily for blind people, but just for safety.
For safety. Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned DNA in the food, and my aunt used to make a specific thing, and she lived out of state, and we would go to her place, and we always loved this dish that she made, and we could never get it exactly right. And my dad would always say, well, that's because you don't have any of Aunt Jane in it. and that's true. As I got older and started making it a little better, I had chunks of skin missing, grating potatoes and stuff from it. So yeah, I completely understand with the grater. Going back to the sharps basket or container, do you guys sell those, or is that something you just go to? Well, I know, just thinking about it, I know IKEA has a lot of things like that in their kitchen section, different containers like that. But do you guys sell them as well?
We do, and we sell them in sets of 2. So I think I probably shouldn't say price, but I think they're like $11.99 for a set of 2. And the other thing I want to kind of put out there too, which is kind of cool with the blind kitchen, if you're choosing between IKEA or Amazon or Maxi-Aids or whatever, Oregon has no retail tax, so you'll never pay sales tax, and it's free shipping. Plus, you get those videos that tell you what it is and how to use them. So you're not going to get that at Amazon, I promise.
Yeah. So we're talking about how to set up our kitchen, how to use our tools. What about the recipes? What's the workaround for accurately reading a recipe for someone who, well, I guess both scenarios. Of course, you could perhaps get it in Braille, but if
You
you are
could.
one not Braille proficient, or if you are low vision like I am, what are some things that you help? How do you help people navigate that way?
Good question. So most people know about, large print, but for a lot of
Hmm.
people, that's not an option either. If you have a smart speaker, if
Hmm.
you ask them for a recipe, they'll bring it, like, say, I want, a lady, I want to make an apple pie. And she'll
Right.
say, here's a recipe from foodnetwork.com. Does that sound good?
Hmm.
And then she'll give
Hmm.
you can ask for ingredients or you can ask for instructions. So that's all through your ears. That's
Yeah.
hands-free completely. Also, the way I got through culinary school, I used a Victor reader stream, which my younger
Oh,
students laugh at me
yeah.
because they think it's
Hmm.
so outdated. But I would create the document with step by step, because I couldn't have a laptop in the kitchen,
Hmm.
the commercial kitchen. I couldn't have my phone. I could have it with saran wrap on it, but it would completely lose its focus all the time. It doesn't work
Hmm.
when you're using voiceover. Um, and so the way I was able to do it was and disabled student services are the ones that helped me with this, is we put it in a little Ziploc bag and it's got very prominent buttons, because
Right.
that particular tool, and we don't sell these in the blind kitchen. This is just a tip.
Hmm.
You put
Hmm.
the Word document into the text file and then you just hit pause and play. And that's what got me through
Hmm.
culinary
Hmm.
school. Yeah. So, but there's also, if it, there are a lot of different ways. Some people use the pen friend, and I've actually done
Hmm.
this with students before, where I put like a sticker, sequential stickers, and they listen to one sticker. They'll say, gather 1 cup of milk, 3 eggs, and 4 whatever. And so then
Hmm.
they can do that, and then they can touch the pen, and bunk dots can number those. So that's another way to do it. But at the Blind Kitchen, one thing I want to say is we have a library. We call it the Blind Kitchen Library, and it is full of great ideas that
Hmm.
aren't associated with a product or a price. So the way we do the recipes in the Blind Kitchen is I think them through all the way, and I put them in such an order. So when you go to read it, however you read your PDFs, or if you're using screen readers or whatever, in the Blind Kitchen, they are blind friendly. They are like, for example, prepare your produce first before you do your meat, because then
Hmm.
you're going to have a contaminated work tray. So
Right.
it gives you, and so it just gives they're done with the blind in mind. They take a long time, but they're really worth it. So if people want me to prepare a recipe for them in that format, I love doing it. It's a challenge for me, and I enjoy
Hmm.
doing that.
What are some other things that people will see when they come to your website, The Blind Kitchen?
Well, when they come to the Blind Kitchen, we actually were on TV, and that was kind of cool. That's where it starts out. But there's like an about the chefs section if you are curious. The other thing it has is it has 12 categories of things related to cooking. So we all know that cooking doesn't begin or end in the kitchen. You've got to get your ingredients, you've got to get your supplies, you got to get your
Mhm.
recipes. You have to be able to label things. You have to be able to identify things in closed containers. So we go through those 12 categories, and the most recent one we added is grilling and barbecuing, because
Mm.
people were like, where's that at? It's not on the website. So
Right.
we
And it's perfect
added
timing
some
for it
stuff in.
now. Hmm.
You're exactly right. You're exactly
Hmm.
right. So we added that in. So there are things in there. So cleaning is another thing. And one of my more helpful tips is when you go to cook, and this works whether you have vision loss or not. But if I'm cutting chicken or working with raw eggs, now my fingers are contaminated, right? And I've got to go to the
Yeah.
sink and wash my hands.
Yeah.
So if I
Hmm.
touch the faucet, if I touch the handles
Hmm.
of the water faucet, whatever, that now I've got to come back and clean it because it's contaminated.
Yep.
But if you just run a couple of inches of hot soapy water, now all you need are your forearms to find your sink. and you're not going to touch anything, and you can just dip your fingers into that water, and now your fingers are clean and you haven't contaminated anything. And the reason I say just do a couple of inches is because there's nothing more gross than cold, greasy water or whatever. It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
But you can just, as you're cooking, you say, oh, it's getting a little lukewarm here. Just add another inch of hot water and it'll revise the soap, and you're ready to go again. And dipping your fingers is always pleasant. So those are the kind of tips you'll get. That doesn't cost any money at all, but it sure saves. And the other thing it does is it allows you, let's say I'm measuring out that vanilla. I've got the funnel, I've got the little spouted pitcher. I'll just throw it in the water. I've already started cleaning it.
Clean as you go.
There you go.
Let's talk about the business side of the website. So you sell the products from there. Do you actually pack and ship, or are they drop shipped? How does that all work out?
It's funny you mentioned drop ship. My son just told me about that yesterday. I want to go that direction. For right now, it's just my husband and I. Where he packages them and takes them to the mail, to the post office, and does all of that. So one thing I learned at the Small Business Administration, probably the most important thing, is do what you love and pay someone else to do the rest. So I love to teach and I love to cook. And so the business is, just getting off the ground. The blind community is starting to find out, and I appreciate that you guys reached out to us. But at some point, when the business becomes where it can stand on its own, I want to contract that all out, and I want to continue to make more videos, get more items on the shelves. So if I had any business advice to offer anyone, it would be do what you love and try and find another way. Sometimes you can do bartering.
That is some very good advice, though, as far as do what you love and pay somebody else to do the other. I've had similar advice along the way, and there are ways, I'm sure, that you can do that, whether you use Fulfilled by Amazon or any of those things. Of course, when you do it that way, I think it's 15% of whatever the price is. So then you've got to figure out how much do you want to really make on it, because you're going to be paying them such a lot.
Yeah.
So right now you have a room in your house or apartment that has, I'm having flashbacks of when my wife and I ran a beauty supply business out of our house. Our basement looked like a beauty store with the gondolas full of items. And that was difficult for me because Seeing AI wasn't around then. And, those bottles of hair color were so tiny that it was so hard for me to figure that out if my wife wasn't home. If somebody called, hey, you have this in stock? It's just giving me flashbacks. And as far as the website goes, how often do you update it?
We are updating it all the time. And I just want to say something else because we're adding recipes to it. We're adding new items to the shelves. It's we're still young. There's a lot of work to still be done. But the other thing I want to say about the website is everything is audio described. It is simple. It is clean. There are no pop-up ads. We don't have any sponsors. When you go to the website, if you're using a screen reader or magnifiers, we just want to make it as easy as possible for anyone to be able to navigate it.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. It was very easy to navigate. What I'm curious about, Chef? Can you think of any success stories? Can you think of an example of someone who you kind of led to an aha moment, who thought, life and my kitchen life is over now. Any success stories of turning someone's hope around?
More than one. And I don't mean to be sexist, and I don't mean to be ageist, but generally the people that benefit are older women who their identity was cooking for holidays, for their churches, for or cultural meals or whatever. It was part of their identity. And now all of a sudden, macular degeneration or diabetic retinopathy takes their vision or a lot of their functional vision, and they lose that part of themselves. And I've had more than one testimony where people are like, this has changed my life. I'm back, I'm back.
Wow.
And the other testimonies that I get are people that When you lose your vision, social isolation is a big thing. All of a sudden, you don't know where the bathrooms are, places, I don't. So when I go out to dinner, oftentimes I don't drink as much as I normally would because I don't want to have to use this strange restroom. I think they all should be, conform, but no, where's the paper towels? I have no idea. Where's the handle?
And of course, that's the worst place you want to be feeling around for anything is inside the bathroom.
Right. Groping around a bathroom. No, you're exactly right. So, so one of the things we found that the Blind Kitchen does help people do is to connect. Everybody eats. Everybody has to eat. And so we really want to expand on that and use the platform to maybe have cook-alongs where with this world now post-COVID, Zoom calls, just the way we're meeting, that would have never been true for us even 4 years ago, probably. I wasn't who we are now. And so really we want to do that. Maybe have cooking contests, definitely cooking lessons, but that's the other thing about changing people's lives.
Yeah.
I know learning to cook, and it changed my life. And and cooking, people have different love languages. Some people like to give gifts. Some people like to hug. Some people like to, there's different ways. And cooking is my love language. That's what I do. I'm not going to send you a note, probably. I'm probably not going to clean your house for you, but I'll cook for you. And that is the way a lot of people express their love. And when that gets taken from you, that's hard. And so the Blind Kitchen's helping. I mean, of course, we're not perfect in being able to completely make it like you can see again. It'll never be like that. I promise you. You're always going to have to start to think before you do. Think when you put something down, where is it going to be at? But but there are tools. Let me tell you about one more that I love. So if you're an apron wearer, and I advocate people wear aprons because they can help you organize, keep things with you. Knife sheaths. When I take it off the knife, I put that knife sheath right in my apron because I'm going to want that back after it's clean. And it's not going to be dirty. It's going to be fine. But we have something called towel clips. And what they are, it's a little plastic circle connected to like an alligator clip. The jaw is open, stainless steel. And you put it on your apron string, and we run ours for the wash. And you take a kitchen towel and you run the string through the plastic loop. And so now the alligator clip is hanging freely. And this whole thing is only about an inch long. And so you open the clip of the stainless steel, clip the towel in there. And now your towel is traveling with you through the kitchen. You don't have to worry about stepping out on the floor, which is how I always found it. I put it very carefully in one place on the counter. And the next thing you know, I'm stepping on like, oh, are you kidding me? But the other thing that's nice about it is if your towel gets wet, you're dipping your hands in that soapy water and wiping it off. It just takes a second to squeeze that alligator clip, put it into the laundry, and put another dry, clean towel on there. Game changer.
So many simple, but just so efficient tips. This is just fantastic. So I have to ask, what's your favorite thing to make? I know that's not asking like somebody who has 3 kids, who's your favorite child, but
I have
just
two grown
humor
sons
me.
that ask me who's your favorite. And when they ask me that, I say, it's the one not asking me that question. And they move in and out of the will that way too, just for the record. But I really loved making mashed potatoes. And the secret to mashed potatoes is
butter,
you add
butter.
so much butter. So you just can't stand it anymore.
I saw that and I laughed out loud. And I'm like, you know what? That makes sense though. See, for me, it would be butter and garlic, actually.
Oh, that's good too. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I do like to make a lot of things. I think mostly my favorite is to make, and the vegans out there are going to be upset, but I like to do like protein and then make pan sauces out of it. And I generally use only one seasoning. So I'm not generally going to use an Italian blend for like a chicken marsala sauce. Okay. I'll choose oregano, or I'll choose thyme, or I'll choose basil. And so that way that flavor, that one thing comes through as opposed to a blend. But blends are fine too. But that, you asked, my personal thing is I like to highlight and showcase a certain herb or spice. Thank you for asking. I love that question.
Do you have an herb garden? Do you have a garden where you grow fresh, or do you?
You can't believe what I have. So I got these on Amazon. I don't sell them. I would like to, but these are pots. So I live on a floating home. So we are literally surrounded by water. So we don't have a whole lot of real estate, and it's all deck. So what we have, I have these tripod planters. So the legs are probably about 5 inches tall. The pots are about 6 inches deep, and they're about around maybe 8 inches. But what they do is they have 2 cavities. So the plant in the dirt is in the top pot, and it fits inside another pot. And that's the pot that holds the water. But coming from the dirt pot, there are 2 holes on the bottom, and there are 2 strings. And the strings draw the water from the lower chamber up into the dirt. And the best part about these pots is there is a alarm that goes off. So it goes in the bottom. It's 2 batteries you put in the bottom. And when the soil is too dry and you need to add more water to that lower chamber, beep, beep, your plant starts crying. Please water me. I love them, but the herbs and stuff come and go with the sunshine and all that. But I do love having my own herbs, and you can put things like scallions or green onions. If you put their feet in water, you get them from the store, put them in water and put them in a window, they'll grow until they fall over. It's crazy. And the same thing happens with leeks. Just put their feet in the water. It doesn't work for everything, but I always have fresh scallions. I don't have to buy them anymore because I just have to cut them down and make sure they're watered.
You were talking about how food and cooking is your love language. So does that mean the business of the Blind Kitchen doesn't wear you out to the point where for home, look, you want to eat, let's get a menu. Yeah, I mean, let's order takeout. You still that you can transition from the business side of it to home and not feel overburdened or weary of it?
I love that question. So I do love to cook for my husband. I also cook for a neighbor who's not well. And so we want to get him healthy meals. So that motivates me, cooking for other people for sure, especially if it's related to health. When I'm working, sometimes I teach 3 or 4 students a day. And that means I've cooked 3 or 4 meals already, and I've cleaned up and I've set up for those. I don't cook after those days, not at all. But when I love having, just like an afternoon and an evening where I can cook something special. I really do. And I cook, I'd say, it's because I work now this term 2 days a week. I cook probably 4 nights a week, I'd say. And I don't mind being treated for dinner either.
Well, of course, who wouldn't? and well deserved, I would say. I was, as you were talking, I was wondering, does she get into the whole meal prep? Is that important for you as well?
Not the meal prep per se. I'm not that disciplined as far as that goes. But what I am into is kitchen efficiency. And and one of the things that we sell is called a butter slicer. And what I do is when I have a special container for butter, and whenever that gets empty, I clean it out and then I add a pound of butter. But what this thing does, it's kind of like a mushroom slicer or hard-boiled egg slicer with the wires, but it cuts butter into slightly more than a teaspoon pats. So when I go to the refrigerator, if I'm making eggs or I'm making mashed potatoes, I can just reach in my refrigerator. These are all pre-cut pats. All I have to do is grab 2 or 3 of them out of there. So I'm into kitchen efficiency that way. I think that's related.
Yeah. And again, these are sort of universal tips. They're really, just like you said, it's kitchen efficiency, whether you're sighted or not.
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, having a towel at your side all the time, that's going to help anybody.
Yeah.
Or being able to grab a butter pat without a knife. That's going to help too.
Right, right. Except when you're making mashed potatoes and you don't need to measure the butter out,
No, you
right?
just no, just take that wrapper off and drop that
Yeah,
puppy in there.
there you go. There you go.
I think my arteries just closed up.
Chef is just even talking about it, huh?
It's
Chef, is
not
there
called the
anything?
healthy kitchen.
Right. We never say that. That's full disclaimer, we never said that. Um, Chef, is there anything else you'd love for people to walk away with from our conversation, or just what they should be looking for when they come to visit the Blind Kitchen?
I do. I really want the Blind Kitchen to be a platform to help blind people who like to cook or want to learn how to cook at some point in time to be able to connect.
Mhm.
We talked about the social isolation, the challenges that keep people out of the kitchen, but I'm not sure how to do it. There is nothing like the Blind Kitchen out there. It's evolving, it's growing, and I love to hear from people. Several of the products that we're adding, like I was doing presentations or podcasts like this one, and people would ask me, "How do you poach eggs?" It's like, well, I don't.
Mm.
Now I figured out a way. I have a little poaching cup that works perfectly with absolutely zero vision. So when people reach out to me, and I hope people do, and you can do that through theblindkitchen.com, or you can email me. And at this point in time, I'm reading every single email, info@theblindkitchen.com, and give me your ideas, your suggestions. What do you want to happen? I don't have a research team that can go and poll people and do that kind of stuff. So I count on people contacting us so that we can modify it and
Yeah.
learn. And people are telling about accessible air fryers and accessible microwaves and convection ovens. So
Hmm.
that is so helpful, because if you tell me what works for you, I have a platform. I can share it with a lot of other people.
Right,
And that, whether it's a culinary tool or whether it's information,
right.
sharing the whole start with the sink of soapy water. That's going to
Mhm.
help a lot of people. It certainly helped me.
Absolutely,
Before we let
absolutely.
you go, I just have to know, you had mentioned it earlier on about cooking shows on TV. Do you have a particular favorite, whether it's something on Food Network or somewhere else? Do you have a favorite TV
I
chef?
do 1,000%. And it's called The Kitchen.
Oh yeah, my
And they
wife
are
loves that.
full. She does.
Yeah, yeah, I
They
watch that all the time with her.
What I love about that show is, first of all, they're trained chefs, and not only do they tell you what they're doing or what's in there or whatever, they give you the science of it, or they give you the presentation
Mm,
of it, or they give you. So even if you have, they're not meant for people with vision loss, and there's stuff that I can't exactly know what's going on, but I find it to
okay.
be very intelligent and
Yeah.
very informative. And what parts I can't see, I can usually figure it out.
Mm.
It's not that fancy that it's out of this world. Yeah, but I
Yeah, that's
love the
when
kitchen.
I watch that with my wife and I don't see, and it's obviously not described, I'll ask my wife what just
Mhm.
what happened there. And the other thing is, I think it's
Exactly.
a very entertaining show as well. So it's
Hmm.
it's just got the whole thing going for it on the weekends on Food Network.
Exactly. And their chemistry together is great. I feel like they really like each other.
I thank our chef for coming on. This has just been making me a little hungry, but this is very informative.
Let's go
Very
make some mashed
informative and
potatoes,
yeah, with lots
Lisa.
of butter and garlic. Yeah. Um, but I really love again how yes, this forum is, primarily we have the blind community in mind, but I love when our ways of working can help people outside of the community. So I love that your approach is twofold. You're helping those you restore hope for those who, as you said, may have lost their identity, through vision loss and being able to cook for family. You're helping people get back to that, but also there are tips that even people outside of the blind community can learn. So I just love that you have that approach of catching a wider net, I guess, casting a wider net. So
But I'll
thank you for
always
that.
focus on the blind community. Just saying. That's my
Yeah, and
passion.
yeah, and I love that. I love that. So Deborah, why don't you give us that website and email address one more time?
Sure. It's theblindkitchen.com. And it's very important you put in the word the, because there is a show in Boston where they blindfold people that can see perfectly well. It's called Blind Kitchen. And they have them compete. And we could talk for an hour about that show. Pros and cons.
Yeah.
But if you have to put in theblindkitchen.com, or else you're going to get sent to that show, and that's not me.
Okay.
And then the email is info@theblindkitchen.com.
And we'll have the links in the show notes, as well as social media links, because you are on Instagram, as we've mentioned, YouTube and Facebook. So we'll have links there as well. Debra, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed the conversation. You guys made me laugh more than one time.
Oh, that's good. Well, the pleasure was certainly ours, Debra. Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Chef Debra Erickson for stopping by and telling us about everything at theblindkitchen.com. Lisa, there's a lot of great things in that shop.
A lot of great things in that shop, and a lot of great, just practical tips from Chef Debra. I hope folks picked up on something that she said about just sort of regaining your hope and regaining your footing after vision loss. She started a whole new business. So it can be done. You can go back to doing what you used to love doing, maybe even more so, because I think she's kind of found a new passion.
Absolutely. And you could hear it in her voice. She's so excited to talk about it. She loves doing it. And if you think about it, she has taken two not so great things, losing her sight and COVID, and has created something tremendous for blind folks.
Yeah, I think Debra's story is full of hope in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, while we're talking about food, I don't want to fail to mention that the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania is an affiliate for a previous guest on the show, and that is White Cane Coffee. There's a link in the show notes. When you click on it and you go to whitecanecoffee.com, anything you buy, the affiliate will earn a 10% commission. So let's say you buy a couple of pounds of coffee, you want to get over $50 because then you get free shipping. And then that means the affiliate would pick up $5 from your sale just from you doing that. It doesn't cost you anything more. And the affiliate, the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania, makes that commission. So a very good opportunity there for you to support both the small business in Warren, Pennsylvania, run by a woman who is blind, and it then also helps out all of us within the NFB of Pennsylvania.
So a win-win. So if you are out there with any show ideas, any comments, we welcome them. You can email us at whitecanesconnect@gmail.com, or
you can give us a call. And I have to tell you, when you said White Canes Connect, when I was doing the show notes for White Cane Coffee episode and thinking White Canes Connect, White Cane Coffee, it became a little tricky from time to time. And I hope I got them all right. But please reach out, give us a call. Let us know how you cook things at your house or how you measure things. Remember, something you do, you may have sparked an interest in someone else saying, hey, I could do it that way too. That might be very helpful. So reach out via phone, 267-338-4495. You have up to 3 minutes to leave your tip, your question, your show ideas, a gripe, something you don't like, something you love. Whatever it is, please reach out, 267-338-4495. Please leave your name and town if you do leave a voicemail, and we will play it on an upcoming episode. Again, 267-338-4495.
So in the meantime, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.